We are recording and welcome to Art 116 in the afternoon. So I've got Amanda here. I'm going to start a new column for us in this week. And Amelia and Ezra, good day to you, sir. And Mary is here. And Skylar. Okay. Well, fantastic. 5 people on a rainy, horrible day like this is better than no people, so I'll take it. That's great. Welcome to you. Um, okay, so I'm going to do this crazy little thing as a demo to start walking us through this project and as kind of a review of what I started us on the weekend. Let's see, Mary's got her camera on. Fantastic. Welcome. Nice to see a person up there. That's always good. Okay, I'm going to change camera views to my overhead cam here and get out the old glue stick and see what kind of a mess I can make here. So originally I was going to put my neutralized red over there and my neutralized green over here, but try to put my red and green in here. Well, look at this. I have somehow with paint, stuck two of my elements together already. So I'm halfway there. I'm just about halfway there. Okay. I'm going to try to like stick the rest of my elements together so that they will stick. And we'll try to find a place for them in the compositional space so that they are dominating the compositional space, hopefully centered in the composition, unless it serves the composition's purpose to have them slightly off center to create some kind of interesting tension in the composition. Because as designers, we're always looking at the compositional space and possible tensions. So I'm thinking of this as a horizontal composition, although you don't have to think about it that way. I sort of stuck these bad boys together like this. I could think about them any other way that's possible. Gosh, I'm kind of interested in going this way just because in Western civilization we read left to right, and so my eyes would be going out the red arrows from left to right in this thing into the green, and I'm just trying to see if that is any stronger compositionally, and of course creating more simultaneous contrast going that way than it was my original way, which is this way. Oh hell, I don't know. It doesn't really seem to matter much to me. My glue is somewhat drying on the back while I was dithering and thinking about this, so you kind of have to re-glue stuff. Get yourself some fresh glue on the back, and then I found that this Bristol board is quite it has quite a mind of its own once it's got paint on it. So I went over to the ceramics lab and I got me a few heavy things, stones, something that I could use as a weight to weigh things down as I'm gluing them, because otherwise they want to curl on me for some strange reason. Curl! Can you imagine? So these little guys are the stilts, the kiln stilts that we use for stacking the ceramics kiln. And now they are my little weights that I'm going to use to weigh down pieces of the composition as I'm doing this. In the meantime, I've got my neutralized green leaves over here, and I think I'm just going to glue them up real quick and then throw them in here, maybe even throw them right underneath some of the things that are holding down the fort here. Some of my weights that are helping to hold the composition flat. So let's see what happens when I try to do something funny like this. Can I hold this down and hold it in place, sort of, and try to get some kind of uniform placement of elements in the composition? Maybe, maybe not. And this one is drying off already. Amazing how that happens. And get one more going down here. Hopefully I'm getting my leaves sort of I'm going for uniform placement, uniform spacing with my leaves. I was still hoping that my secondary elements that are on the outside of the composition were somehow showed a repetition of form. There's even kind of a nice little repetition of form happening in these little flame things inside in the center of the composition. So I was going to try to get that repetition of form happening on the outside. Same thing with these little, I don't know what I'm going to call them, pie pieces, because they're not quite triangles. They have a curve on one side. So I'm going to take my little pieces of apple pie here, my little pie pieces, and stick them in over on the other side and see how they interact with stuff in the composition. I'm actually trying to look past all of my little weights here to see how these little pie pieces might line up with the negative space in here between each one of these little pointy flame-like incursions into the green space. So I was trying to get them to even be in the negative spaces, kind of between this. As a designer, I'm trying to respond to the spaces and the negative spaces, the forms and the negative spaces, you know, can create kind of an interesting dialogue in your composition. And so I'm just kind of seeing what's going on in the composition, trying to take some of my inspiration from what's going on with the different shapes in the composition, relating to them if possible. So while that is drying, I'm going to come bring my face back up to you guys to say hi. So changing cameras and coming back to the talking head as this thing dries, and it might only take 5 minutes for this to dry, and then we can talk about it. But I was hoping that well, you're going to be in any possible state of finish with this project. Some of you have jumped in and played with it a little bit and would even like to share it with us today. I was hoping that at least a couple of you might be prevailed upon to share your project in whatever state of finish it is. If it is in a draft form and it's quite not ready for prime time, that's okay. We'd love to see it and see what's going on with your composition. And so if it's digital, we can do a screen share if it's digital, and if it's just a bunch of pieces of paper, you know, on a larger piece of paper sitting in front of you, maybe somehow you could shine a light, show your webcam down on it so we can get a sense of it. Let's see, Skylar. Oh, look at you! You came right up to the fore there. Did you want to do the share screen with me? I've got to enable that. So I've just enabled share screen. Why don't you go ahead and steal the screen and show us something from your end of the camera?
So I don't know if this is exactly what you were wanting. I don't know.
Skylar, relax. It's not, how could you ever do exactly what I want? And it doesn't really matter what I want. You know, you give a assignment and then you see what happens. So we've got oh my gosh, complementary colors happening here with complementary color shapes, and they're coming into contact with each other, which is really interesting. It's really a fun project that you put together here. So when you're working in Photoshop, let me ask you, or is this Illustrator? I can't even tell what this is. What is this?
This is Illustrator,
okay.
But the same can be done in Photoshop.
All right. So do they have, when you're looking at colors, do they have anything like a color wheel so that you could actually see whether colors are across from each other on the color wheel and complementary, or do they have more of a palette of colors to just choose from?
So that was a struggle. That was probably like the biggest struggle for me. Can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Okay, so this is like where I went to for the color guide. It's not necessarily like a color wheel per se. It's yeah.
Oh, it's sort of a color wheel. I know what
Okay.
they're doing here.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, you've selected things that are sort of opposite each other off of that circular thing, sort of. I mean, we knew that we wanted orange and blue. Those are, oh, there you go. That's way more color wheel-ish. There you
Yeah,
go.
this is what I used to get like the oops, it's gonna beep at me to get like the top blue box and the bottom orange box. This is what I used this.
Okay. So that's perfect. You know, I really like your project. I like all of the shared edges that are happening with the colors and the shapes in the middle. And the one thing that is just a little bit not quite what I was looking for in the assignment was that oh, you can't see my cursor. The background shape in the upper half of it, the blue rectangle in the upper half that's in the background is the full spectrum intensity blue. And the orange rectangle in the bottom half is the full spectrum intensity orange. And somehow I wanted those things to actually be coming in contact with each other along a really long edge. And right now I only see them actually making physical contact with each other on the two tangents. Yeah, like right there at the edge. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's tantalizing because they want to be color complements illustrating simultaneous contrast, but the only place where they're coming in direct contact is at that point. I love everything else because everything else is, you know, really cool. Lots of textures, lots of imagery that you've taken little bites out of and created circles and donuts out of, which is fantastic. I love it. That's cool. But yeah, I liked what you just did there, pushing that around a little bit. Can you take that circular image and kind of push it halfway off the page, either left or right? Just will it just drag over there and kind of, yes, okay, that's good, because now I'm seeing on the right hand of the composition, we've got orange and blue coming into direct contact with each other. And that's a thing. All this other stuff is just kind of illustrating what goes on with uh, neutralized versions of the colors. So we've got neutralized orange coming in direct contact with the blue field in the upper half, and a neutralized blue coming into direct contact with the orange field down below. But it's kind of important to have this right hand area of the composition where we've got big blue and big orange either sharing an edge or overlapping, so that they're actually vibrating or clashing. You know, in design, we often use words that are not academic sounding. Like, you know, we talk about how things go together when we're talking about putting things together in a composition in fashion or interior design or something. We're looking at how things go together. Well, that's not really helpful, but it gets the job done. And by the same token, when we talk about colors clashing, you know, right now we've got the orange and the blue doing as much clash as they possibly can when they've got a big edge of color that is coming in direct contact with each other. So that's what's happening on the right hand side of the page. The left hand side right now, this semicircle of donuts and everything, it's really cool because in some ways, some of those photographic images seem more vivid than the just the background color fields of blue and orange. But technically they're not. They're, you know, technically they've got a little bit of uh, neutralizing happening in them because they're either got tints or shades of the orange in there, and they're not just the full bright color of the orange. I love them though, because there's so many different things. You've got in the orange upper half of that, you've got the stripy donut, and you've got the donut made up of oranges itself, and you've got another donut that is a little bit more like flame things and that kind of stuff, which is really cool. And you've got a similar thing going with the blue donuts down below. And then I love that you put a neutralized version of orange and a neutralized version of blue in the center of your donut hole, because that was really cool. And they're coming in direct contact with each other. That's cool. I like that. It's not exactly what I was looking for, but it gives us plenty to look at and plenty to talk about. It satisfies my need for a project. I'm sorry to have to make you take like half of it and shove it off of the page, but this allows us to have the full spectrum intensity orange and the full spectrum blue to come in direct contact with each other along a pretty good sized area of intersection there in the center of the composition. So does that sort of make some sense?
Yeah.
I mean, this, what I asked you to do right here satisfies the project more, but I dig all of the imagery and all the textures and everything that you went to a lot of trouble to get. And I appreciate all of the work that you put into all of those different donuts that are, in the left portion of the composition. They're cool. So does this hurt your feelings that I asked you to move that over so that it's half off of the composition?
No, I just,
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that it was what you were looking for. So
This is asymmetrical now. And so it's interesting because it creates a tension in the composition. And we love a little bit of tension in our compositions. It's no fun to just have all of your junk like in the middle of the composition and completely balanced, because that gets to be a little bit less interesting to the viewer. This creates tension between the right-hand side of the composition and the left, as well as other tensions between top and bottom, and interesting balances too in the composition. So I don't know if what I've suggested is the way that you want to leave it or not, but it does help to have the two big shapes of blue and orange in direct contact with each other on the right side to just show us the brightest area of simultaneous contrast in the composition. So was I gentle enough? Did that help without hurting in terms of giving you some feedback?
yeah, no, that was great. That was great. I originally went with because I tried this at first, and I love asymmetrical. I do. When I'm taking pictures, I tend to, focus on asymmetrical. I went with more of that in the middle look to kind of give like that target representation. Um,
Yes.
so like these colors were more of like that target color for media, for the picture images that we see on the outside. But I completely agree that these colors weren't coming into direct contact enough. So I liked both. I like both.
Yeah. I hate to make you change your idea or your composition. This is only a suggestion just to get us getting that simultaneous contrast happening between the two full spectrum intensity colors in color shapes. I hate to destroy all the work that you did with the circles and the donuts over on the left hand side. So I don't know what to tell you.
You're
But
you're fine.
it is asymmetrical. It does create tension. It makes the viewer now ask all kinds of questions like, why is this shoved over? And so it probably also almost creates too much tension for the viewer, but that's okay, because tension is an edgy kind of a thing, and you crazy avant-garde artists and designers love tension, because then when you do something that makes the viewer ask why, then it gets them way more engaged in your project. When the circle was in the exact middle, it was really, really balanced. It was lovely to look at. It wasn't probably as engaging as this thing that makes you ask the question why, though, which I never understood that when I was an art student, and it drove me nuts too, because I spent so much time making the really nice image that I didn't want to screw it up. Oh, look at you reorienting us in space and stuff. So now we've got lots more balance in the composition. And maybe the different orientation works a lot better for this particular set of shapes. You're playing, and this is good. This is good to just get engaged and play with it some more. I like that. So flipping it this way or flipping it the other way could work for you. And but the imagery that is captured inside the donut levels is really interesting too. I like that a lot. It creates a really strong focal point for that part of the composition.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'll continue to play around with it and figure out.
I love the idea of being able to use the digital imagery or tools, because you've been able to do lots with this while we've been talking over your work, and you're resizing, and you're um, not flipping, you are rotating and doing all of these other manipulations of the image, which is really fun because, and you also could slide the image halfway off, which was also a really interesting way of solving the problem really quickly. So the digital tools are very powerful, and they allow you lots of ways of manipulating the image, which is great. I like it. That's good. I don't want you to spend a whole lot more time with this because it looks like you've already spent a bunch of time on this. So, thank you for that. Was this a huge time consuming thing over the weekend, or did you just kind of do clip, clip, clip and threw some stuff together because you're fast with this tool?
Yeah, it was yeah, never mind. It was good.
All
This is what
right,
I work on all the time. So for me,
cool.
it's pretty easy.
Very good. Does anybody else in the peanut gallery have anything that you might like to chime in on? Is there anything that that particularly jumps out to anybody about this composition that you'd like to comment on, either about balance or the idea of simultaneous contrast or anything else? I know that,
Um,
yes, please.
One thing I noticed that I rather liked was how the textures almost seem to contrast in a sense. Like
Thank you.
this ring closest to the center has a less, like almost a blur to it, while its blue counterpart has more texture, along with various other rings. The oranges have more centered, while this one is more like a grid almost. I thought that was nice.
Yes, those contrasts of like organic texture with architectural texture on the right side, and the striped texture on the next one in, contrasting with a very subtle, I don't know, fish scale, something weird, subtle going on in there. And like you were talking about, the almost flame-like textures on the inner one, with something that's more like ice or ice crystals on the right side. So, Skylar, were you actually cluing into all of those different kinds of textures and the kinds of um, contrasts that they were making?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for. I'm glad somebody saw that and I wasn't like going crazy.
Ezra, good job on making that and noticing that. That's an awesome observation. So thank you for that. Well, I think we're good. If you want to end the screen share, we can come back to the ugly guy in the art department. And so I wanted to offer this to anybody else who might want to share anything that they've got. I know it's really hard to follow something like what Skylar did because she did really good. That was very good. And, my poor paltry thing now looks really sad in comparison. But if you guys want to share something, get ready to. I'm going to come back to my other camera angle here to just pull this apart because this has been drying for a while. So if I pull all of the weights off of here, where I've been holding things flat, then I get something that is glued down, yay. But that also then we can investigate in terms of rotating it in space just to see if it makes any more sense going either way. But my main shapes are in the center, and hopefully you get the best sense of simultaneous contrast when you're looking at two big shapes sharing a long edge, even if it's an interesting or articulated edge. between the bright red and the bright green. And then we're trying to show in a secondary way how a neutralized version of the color could harmonize just a little bit better. It's a peripheral thing, it's a secondary thing. So I shoved it out to the periphery in this case. Skylar's take on this was really good, and it works just fine in the way that she interpreted it too. So there are more than one way to satisfy this or solve this little assignment, which would be just fine. Put the pie pieces over here and sticking them so that actually a point of the pie piece kind of pointed into the negative space between these 2 points. That was just kind of a thing that happened very recently. I didn't really work on that with the leaves, trying to get the leaves pointing in towards some of these petal shapes. I suppose a person could have done that and done a better job of it. But we've got what we've got here, which does give a sense of balance, perhaps, you know, a little bit of asymmetry because we've got 2 different kind of large shapes and they're kind of doing something on a little bit of a diagonal instead of cutting the composition right exactly in half. So, I mean, this is fairly minimal, but it gets the job done really quickly. And so that was the one that I did with you guys and with this class. And this was the one that I did with the morning class. And so I spent today, Monday, basically just going over what we talked about and gluing these things down in front of people as, you know, my demonstration. So hooray, we glued paper down today. Coming back to you guys now. And the morning class did not go very long. It was like 20 minutes because nobody was quite ready to share anything yet. They hadn't quite either gotten to this assignment or quite wrapped their head around the assignment. So they're going to try to have something ready by Wednesday. And if you don't quite have something ready, that's fine too. I just barely got the assignment actually typed up in coursework for us. The deadline, the due date for this assignment is this weekend, Saturday, Sunday. So, but I'm going to plow right ahead. We are falling a little bit behind, and I'm going to try to do at least one more project this week. So I'm going to introduce another project on Wednesday, but I wanted to get this one with you guys today so that you can see it just a little bit. Does anybody else have something to share for the good of the order that you might like a little bit more feedback on? Otherwise, we're going to kind of wrap this up a little early today. And I usually look at the participants list. Oh my gosh, there's Mary.
I just had one more question.
Yeah.
We can use the magazine clippings, right?
Yes,
to go with the paint?
By all means, especially if you were able to find a magazine from the store, that's great. If you've got old magazines, that's fine too. I really try to use the highest quality magazines possible so that the printing is as high density and full color as possible. If you can see text kind of bleeding through from the back of the image, sometimes it's nice to cut another shape that's exactly the same shape as your image shape. Cut it out of black paper and glue it to the back. That will make the text that's trying to bleed through go away, because everything then looks like just black trying to bleed through the color. Then the color actually looks more vivid, if that makes any sense. But yes, you can use, yes, you can use found imagery in a magazine as something that you can collage into something like this. And you can mix and match it with painted shapes too, if you want. So it can be all magazine imagery, it can be all painted shapes, and or as we saw beautifully illustrated by Skylar, it can be also done in a digital format too. So I think we're going to leave it there unless anybody else has something for the good of the order, a question or a comment for me. I'm going to go ahead and post this recording, and hopefully now you guys can see all the recordings that I have made and can get to them if you need to go back to see anything that you may have missed in these presentations. But we'll see you again on Wednesday, and hopefully you'll have something kind of roughed out by Wednesday that we can actually do a share screen and talk about. If you're working in this format, please have it glued down so that you can, pick it up and show it on your webcam, or take a digital photograph of it and have it ready to do a share screen with us on Wednesday, because that would be fun. Even though the due date isn't until the weekend, I'm sure you could throw something together by Tuesday. So thank you guys for your indulgence. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you again on Wednesday afternoon. Have a good, wet middle of your week. See you later.